Hey, what's up? This is Pete here, and in this video I want to share with you the power of thinking, especially right now. Now, if you're new to my channel, this is a little bit different to the videos that I usually do. Usually I talk about sales transformation, how you can sell your product or service successfully, and today, obviously talking about thinking, is a little bit different to obviously talking about sales. I've had plenty of time to think over the last few days, and I'm sure you've had plenty of time to think, especially if you're in the UK and you're in lockdown at the moment. And this is one thing that, especially right now, I think needs to be talked about. And even though I'm not an expert, maybe there's one or two things I'll share that you feel like, oh, that really relates to me. My point is as we all know already, the world is in complete turmoil. There's an economical breakdown. Nobody really knows what's happening with this whole COVID-19 crisis, and we don't know how long it's going to go on for or how far it's going to reach. However, the one thing that we do know is that the majority of the world in this moment, as I film this video, are in lockdown. So that basically means spending a lot more time at home, spending a lot more time potentially with family, which could be a good or bad thing, but also ultimately spending a lot more time with themselves. And the reason why I say that is because if we think about it this way, if you take an individual who's worked in their career, or maybe they've ran a business for say 20 years, they haven't had a chance necessarily to spend a lot of time with themselves. And I don't mean just physically being around other people. What I mean is that when you're so busy and you're working Monday to Friday, and then on the weekend you're busy with family, and then that goes on month after month, year after year, and decade after decade, we don't actually have a lot of time to be a human being, and we end up becoming a human doing, almost like a robot just completing the task every week. I don't know if this sounds familiar or this has been your life to a certain extent up until this current crisis. And then imagine this, that same individual that has been busy for 20 years being a human doing is then all of a sudden told by the government, right, you need to go home, you need to stay at home, and don't come back out until this whole thing is over. Now that is a scary situation. And I'm not talking about the economical meltdown. I'm not talking about what's happening with COVID-19. I'm talking about that individual just going home and having to step away from what they saw as their core identity. That can be extremely stressful. It can cause anxiety. It can be the instigator for various mental health issues, although I'm not going into that in this topic, definitely not an expert there. And then I thought to myself, there's never been a more important time, in our lifetime at least, to take the time to think, because it isn't about being a human doing. It's not about just getting things done. Or if you look at other videos on my channel, you will see there's plenty of videos on how to GSD, get done. However, when it comes to right now, I think a big part of how we look after ourselves and that self-care during this time is to appreciate that we actually have a gift of time. This is a gift that probably never gonna have this much time at home again to actually think on a deeper level. So it's not just about thinking, because when we think about thinking, we don't actually think about it properly, where it's much more about the level of depth we think at. I believe, and it's purely my philosophy, you don't have to take it as gold, that the life that we live is based upon the depth of thought that we have. Most people end up in this human doing life. So they're doing tasks, and again, they're like a robot. So their thinking becomes about that. I need to get paid at the end of the month. I need to get a promotion. I need to make sure the kids are all fine. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. However, when 80% of your life might have been work, and all of a sudden you stop that and you're left with all this time, a lot of people right now might not even know who they are. Like, genuinely, they'll be thinking, oh my goodness, who am I? And that's scary for a lot of people. I'm not saying in this video that you need to go out there and make epic things happen in your life. What I am saying though is that something that's worked for me through my life, and I've seen it work for other people as well, is just taking a little bit of time out to think and ask yourself better questions that allow you to think on a deeper level. This right here is actually my favorite spot in my apartment. I've got my fireplace here, and I've got my thinking chair as well. And every day when I'm home, when I have the opportunity, I don't always get to do it, but every day when I'm home, I do my best to have 30 minutes. I've actually sat here for an hour this morning to just think, to ask questions, to look at my life in a different way, to ask, what are the sort of people that I want to work with in my business? Is this part of my business working? How am I doing in terms of being a partner? How fulfilled am I in my life? And I'm not talking about overthinking. What I'm saying is that when we take time to slow down, it genuinely allows you time to speed up, because when you're not thinking and you're just doing, all you end up doing is just these tasks, and they might not even be the best tasks for you. You might be in a job for 5 years and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't even enjoy this work. But it's only when we take time to stop and actually think on a deeper level that it allows us to have a better philosophy and a better angle on our own life. Again, I'm not claiming to be an expert here. I'm only sharing what's been in my thought process, which I thought would be a useful but different video for my YouTube channel. There's a great book as well that I read a few years ago, which actually encouraged me to buy this chair. It's called The Road to Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. And he talks about that every day we want to take at least 30 minutes just to stop and think. I'm not talking about meditation. I'm not talking about you doing that yoga class or having to do some kind of like spiritual thing, because even that, if it's done without thought, can actually be a detriment to us instead of a help, because we're doing it with stress. But just taking the time out to sit quietly, disconnect from all the social media, but reconnect to our true self is fundamentally important. You may challenge me on this and say, Pete, you're completely wrong. I believe that once this crisis is over, and it will be over, schools will reopen, business will resume, the economy will rebuild. That's what we do. We've done that for millions of years as human beings. This whole thing will pass. And when it happens, I believe that there will be people who look at their life differently. In fact, right now, you might be one of those people who've been living life a certain way, and you're like, you know what, tear this script up. I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to do what I'm passionate about. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to help animals, or whatever it is. There's no right or wrong. But my point is that right now we have the gift of time to think on a deeper level. We can truly slow down to speed up. And that's really the message of my video. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.